Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick. This is MSFS Flight Plans, and we are on a mission around here to attempt to save the world through simming. That's right, we're going to try and do it. And I think we might be able to pull it off if we can just survive long enough. If the world can survive long enough, we might be able to do it. Today we are going to enjoy the sights and history of Barcelona, Spain, yet another one of our member recommended locations. And man, we have just been on a tear with great flight recommendations lately. I think our last 3 flights have all been from you guys letting us know places we need to check out, so keep up the good work. This is fantastic. And this beauty that I picked out for us is the Ryan STA Special by A1R Design Bureau. And if you recall that flight over Gibraltar, the Imp, that thing looked like a glider with a overpowered engine, which was an awesome plane. That was also one of theirs. I know these guys are kind of obscure in the developer world, but I've loved every one of their planes. They kind of take the off the beaten path types of planes, vintage stuff, wild things like that Imp. They've all been great. They look good. They fly good. I really enjoy these. And of course, the usual disclaimer, I don't know them. They haven't paid me to say that. Everything you will ever see me talking about on this channel, I paid for it myself. So I'm keeping it real. I call them like I see them, and this one's cool. So let's hop in. Because we do have an open cockpit, it's going to get a little bit loud, and there's a few things about this plane that are pretty cool I want to show you, but let's look at the Google map real quick. All right, so there's Northern Africa. Spain over here. Barcelona is all the way on the eastern side of it, right along the coast of the Mediterranean. We're going to take off from their main airport here, Prat. We're parked about right here, so this is the runway we're going to depart from, going this direction. And then we'll come up here, get a little altitude, get ourselves all squared away, check out the big port that's over here, which looks really, really good. I do have a caveat about that. I'm going to give you some instructions for how to improve that as good as you possibly can. Then we'll cruise along these beaches here, also look awesome around this right up here, which I got a little science museum and some stuff like that over there, and then some great looking landmarks up here. And then we're going to come up here because they have, look at that, you know what that means, theme park. It is a beautiful theme park up on top of this mountain, just looks awesome. So we're going to get a nice close look at that. Come down here by their big stadium, one of their big stadiums. And then this area down here is where all the stuff from the 92 Olympics were, and it also looks amazing. And just as a little bit of an icing on the cake, they got a huge fort right there. And then we're going to come in. We're leaving from this runway. We're going to land on this one because we are going to check out the terminal over here, and I'll tell you why here in just a second. Let's go ahead and get this baby fired up. But before I do that, one interesting thing about this, look where the brakes are. You know, they're usually up here where the toes go. Check that out. So I don't know if you would try to use your heels to operate those or just slide your heels back and use the outside of your feet or what, but that's kind of interesting. Maybe that's how they did that back in the olden days. And it also has this spark lever here, which advances or retards the timing for that. And I couldn't find a manual for it. The tutorials I did find about it, they weren't playing with that at all. And when I was flying around, I was messing with it. It didn't seem to change anything about how it was flying or how the engine was operating. So I'm not really sure exactly what you do with that or how you use it or when you use it. If you guys know, let me know. I'm always curious about things like that. All right, battery, give it some juice. Get the mags on, fuel pump, and we'll even get to sling the propeller around here. Clear prop. So the only thing I would change about it, and it may be true to life anyway, you can hear it's kind of a tinny sounding engine, which may just be how they sounded back in the day, but I like a little bit of a kick in the pants when we fire those babies up, so I might throw a little bit more growl on that sucker if I had my way, but we wouldn't want to make it unlifelike, so maybe that's the way it really sounds. Okay, fuel pump off. Check our barrow. Parking brake off. And I'm going to try real hard not to run out of fuel this time. Here's our fuel gauge up here. I don't know what this one's actually measuring. This is a fuel gauge, but I'm going to keep an eye on that one because I ran out of gas last time. Don't know how that happened, but it did. Okay, so this is a payware airport. You guys know that I usually don't get payware airports, but it also included, it's from Latin VFR, so you know they did a good job. But it included a lot of landmarks, including that stingray hanging in the air there, which is a nice little treat. So I threw that one in there. The airport looks really cool, and the reason why we're landing on that other runway is I'm going to take you on a little tour of one of their 2 big terminals because it also looks pretty good on the inside if you feel like you want to get it. But there's also 2 freeware add-ons that I've got installed. All 3 of them will be linked in the video description. The 2 freewares, one of them is from Freaky D, and he cleaned up the northern end of the port. The southern end, and it is a big port. The southern end looks pretty good by default. This is a photogrammetry city. The northern end did not look good. It had those cranes that looked like spikes, and they were all filled in and all that. He did a great job with it, as always. So that one will be in there. And in between the northern and southern end, it will be separated by a huge oil terminal complex with a bunch of tanks and stuff. If you don't use any add-ons, for some reason, it all got modeled flat, which looks really out of place because it is a huge complex. So if you put the payware one in there, it will give relief to the oil tanks, but it also puts a lot of huge black rectangular buildings, which really stand out as not being in the right spot. So if you take it out, you'll get flat oil tanks. If you put it in, you'll get raised oil tanks, but you'll get the buildings. If you put all 3 of them in there, the other add-on pack, which is a approach modification for that whole part of the city, will take care of the black things, and it'll look normal. But we will get just a little bit of flashing as they compete with each other. It's barely noticeable, though. So if you just put the two freewares in there, they'll be fine. You'll just have a default airport, and maybe one or two of the landmarks won't look as great as they should. But if you just use the freeware stuff, it'll be good. If you use the add-on pack, you'll just get the tall buildings. If you use all three, it'll look like you're about to see. This flight plan will also be linked in the video description, as always, so if you want to take it just like we are, you can click on that, bring it into little NavMap, load it up, and you'll have it ready to go. If you don't know how to do that or don't know how to use little NavMap, I do have a how-to tutorial. It's only about 10 minutes long that will get you up and running for not just bringing the flight plans in, but also using little NavMap, which is a very valuable tool. So check that out if you want to learn how to use that. This is not the live weather. It looks about like this, but we had a strong crosswind on takeoff, and this plane is really tough to control on that takeoff roll, so I wanted to try to get a headwind. And I would advise you to put the time of day at around 9:30 if you're flying in August AM, obviously, because a lot of the landmarks, if you go noon or later, will be pretty dark looking. They'll be really shadowed, and it'll be tough to see the features on them, so I've got it set at about 9:30 AM right now. All right, one notch of flaps. This livery is also an add-on. I should include that little note. There was only 3 included with the plane. I thought this one looked pretty cool, so I threw it on there. So our cruise altitude will probably be, obviously we don't have autopilot, so I'm going to be hand flying this between 1,500 and 2,000 feet. We're going to have to get a little bit more than that probably to check out the theme park because it's up on top of that hill. And the whole trip probably isn't going to be that long, but again, this is a slow plane, so we'll just see how that goes. All of my takeoffs have been horrible. This thing is really, really tough to control on the ground, so I tried slowly advancing the throttle, and it seems like just flooring it and trying to maintain control is the easiest way to do it, so we'll just see what happens. This is a wide runway, thank goodness. Check our barrel one more time. We don't have any lights to worry about. Alternators on. We have our one notch of flaps. And are we on the runway? Looks like it. Close enough. All right, you guys ready? Wish me luck. Here we go. All right, we kept it roughly centered. And let's just get her off the ground. Whew. So I was also playing around with the map enhancements. You know, I talked about that last flight. Now every city I fly over, I see if it makes any difference to add either the Google or Bing map enhancement. I would not use it for this area. It did not improve anything, and it left some pretty obvious marks where the map layers change. So there's one of the terminals off to our right there. Let's get our flaps up. And this one over here to our left I felt was a little bit more complete on the inside, so we're going to land on that runway over there, park somewhere close to that terminal, and check it out on the inside real quick. So hang around at the end if you want to see that. And of course, we'll check out the satellite images from little NavMap too. So this plane obviously has the wings set forward quite a bit, but as you can see if we look behind them, we have miles of field of view, so that's not going to be a problem. Just anything up in our usual area where we try to check it out, and even that's not too bad. So this is the Ryan ST. I'll tell you a little bit of a history about this thing. The first one took to the air in 1934, followed by 1,567 more that was comprised of over a dozen variants. And the ST stands for Sport Trainer, rather appropriately, because it was mostly used for both of those purposes. Bring that throttle back a little bit. And there is something about all of these fields out here. All of them had historical markers on them in Google. Almost all of them. I mean, there's like 50 of them out here. All of them were in Spanish, though, and I could not figure out what the significance of that was because none of them linked to a wiki page or anything. But there is something about all of these farms out here that seems to be important. I just couldn't figure out what that was. So if you're from the area, let us know what's up with that. And anything else that I get wrong. All this information, as always, is just from the internet, so I'm doing the best I can with what the internet's telling us. These coastlines are going to look pretty good, really detailed. Some of the beaches look nice. You can even see some little people out there on them. It'll be wonderful. This is the STA variant, and the A stands for aerobatics. They souped it up a little bit. A lot of the earlier versions had double cockpits. This one just got the one, and they supercharged the engine, bringing it up to 150 horsepower from 125. And they only made 10 of this particular model, but they based the military version, which was the STM, off of this one. And the main difference, as far as I could gather, was they enlarged the cockpit to accommodate someone wearing a parachute. So since they were building these before World War II, they built a lot of them for the military. Most of the civilian use ones were delivered to the U.S., But the military models went to Indonesia, China, and then a bunch of Central American countries, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then after the war, a lot of them made their way down to Australia. And I don't know how many of them still survive down there, but there are quite a few that are still airworthy. So if you're lucky enough, you might spot one flying around somewhere, which is pretty cool. So let's just get oriented along the coast here, try to get up to 1,500 feet. We're almost there. Let's see how she looks from the outside. Beautiful. Just beautiful. Look at that water. Just amazing. Yeah, the airport looks a lot better than the default, but that's how it goes. Hopefully 2024 will clean up all those default airports. So I like this altitude. We'll just trim a little bit here to stabilize, keeping an eye on that little fuel gauge there on the nose. Trim her up. A little bit sensitive on the trim. All right, I think we got it. So Barcelona is the second most populous city in Spain at around 5.3 million people in the metro area. And no one is really sure of the origin of the very first settlers to the area, but they have found some tombs dating to around 5000 BC. So people have been out here for a while, but I would bet that they have probably been out here much, much longer than that. Some of the oldest human fossils ever discovered were found in Spain, northern Spain. Some of those go back hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, if you include Homo sapien predecessors. And they've got some beautiful, very old cave paintings out here too. If you haven't seen those online, it's pretty neat. I think those are in Spain. Maybe they're in France, but they're all in this region. So people that walk around on two legs have been out here for quite a while. But the first people to start setting up permanent population centers were probably the Phoenicians around the 3rd century BC. But like most of the rest of Western Europe, the Romans rolled in around the turn of the first millennium. And they hung around until the area was conquered by the Visigoths in the early 400s, and those guys came from the area that's now modern Germany. And for the next 1,500 years or so, it experienced typical city life for this part of Europe during that time. Plenty of warfare, conquering, plague, burning, rebuilding, torturing. All the usual stuff, and more than we have time to talk about on this trip, unfortunately. But one thing that was constant through all of that was Barcelona's status as a major port city. The modern port's what we're going to check out next. That's going to be right up here on the left, in case you missed it. And I think this region has been a major trading hub since at least Roman times, probably further back than that. In fact, it's probably why the Phoenicians first came out here. Those guys originated from what is now Lebanon, which is all the way on the eastern side of the Mediterranean, about 1,600 miles from here, if you're curious. So this section here is what was flat before. And again, we may see just a little bit of flashing once we get closer to it. This section already looked good, and this next section up here with the yellow cranes is what Freaky D modded up. And that's the part that looked pretty rough up there. So if you throw in any of the add-ons, either the approach add-on or the payware one, these will be cleaned up. If you just do the payware one, there's going to be some giant black things sticking out up there. Not sure how or why that happened. So as we come along here, you'll see right along these jetties, you can see all the rocks and stuff down there. It's really detailed. There's a little bit of that flashing. But not a big deal. I'll take that over the big black thing sticking up in the air. So we're going to come around here, circle around kind of where the city ends over this way, check out some really impressive looking landmarks they have out there. And then here's where that big theme park is. And of course they have a big observation tower, so we'll swing around the northern side of that, come down around this way. There's the big stadium that we'll check out. And then come over here and check out this. This is where the Olympic area is. You can't really see it because it's behind that mountain. Montjuic is what that mountain's called. And then there's a big castle right on top of that. And there might even be a little gondola system that I forgot to look for last time. So we'll see if old Mamu Designs modeled that one. If it caught it. If the algo caught it. But look at that port. You can imagine how disappointed I was the first time I came out here in a photogrammetry city to see that this was completely flat. But it looks good now. And I'm not even seeing any of that flashing. We won't really see this area, but because those are so colorful, I'm guessing those were probably add-ons. But look at that detailing. Just wonderful. So two things that kind of jumped out at me, nothing real historically significant. As we come up around this part of the port, there's going to be a pier that sticks out here, and on the end of it is a circular building that is the World Trade Center for Barcelona, which is a big office complex. And then that black thing right there is a big W hotel. And this area back behind it is called Port Vel. Victor Echo Lima Lima. And on the satellite map, which we'll check out at the end, there is a huge super yacht marina right back up in here with some really big boats that are kind of fun to look at. We'll check that out. So here's Freaky D's port. Looks fantastic. Awesome job as always. Looks really good. And when you see the World Trade Center, which is this thing right here, if you follow that pier back, I'm going to see if we can spot a big monument they have to Christopher Columbus that went up in 1888. And they threw that up there because this was where he returned after his first trip to the New World to report back to the King and Queen. I did not realize that this is where he came back to, but that's why they put that up there. And they really built up a lot of the larger infrastructure of this city. In 1929, they had a big international expo out here, later converting a lot of that to some of the more modern structures, including some of the Olympic stuff that we'll check out later. Look at all those cruise ships. I was surprised there wasn't even more big historical landmarks out here. I just figured there would be, I guess. So we're kind of taking a small trip because there's just not that much to see, but what we will see does look good for sure. All right, let's see if we can see that Columbo statue. So there's the World Trade Center, and we'll get a little bit closer. I want to show you these rocks on the breakwaters anyway. Let's see how she looks from the outside again. Oh, that might be my thumbnail. That looks pretty cool. Just bank it a little bit. Okay. It's probably behind that white thing right now. Yep, there it is. There's the monument right there. That's it. You see that thing? If you have a big screen, you can see it. Cool. They got it. I figured it would be in there. There was a big marker on the Google map. So this big green area down here is called Citadel Park, which was formerly home to the largest fortress in all of Europe. And unfortunately for us, the last remnants of it were destroyed in the 1800s. It was only there for about 100, 150 years. But they did convert some of the old buildings down there to the city zoo, which, as you can see, has lots of trees on it, so there's nothing we can really see down there. But that zoo was the home to the world's only known albino gorilla named Snowflake. I saw some pictures of him, but he died in 2003. And he did not look happy about being an albino. Or in a zoo. Maybe both things. So as we circle back around up here, we are going to see their Museum of the Natural Sciences, which I think used to be down in the park where the Citadel was. But they moved it up here. It's this big triangular thing, which looks kind of neat, so I figured it was worth checking out up here. And this over here, if you have the add-on pack, the payware add-on pack, is a big power plant. If you don't have that in there, there'll just be 3 smokestacks sticking up, which looks a little bit odd because you can see the shadows for the bottom part of it, but not the bottom part. It's just the 3 smokestacks. So that looks a lot better. So there's the Science Museum, which looks like it might have a turf roof. And then this area right here is a big covered thing that's an urban park with like rappelling and rock walls and zip lines and things like that in it. And I think this is just a big solar panel array, which looked a little bit different than that last time I was out here. It looked like a modern art sculpture. It looks a little bit more like it really does now. So you can tell the buildings change color here. I think this is where the photogrammetry boundary is, right along this river right here. And check out these beaches. If you get even closer, they look great. Again, you can see all the people that are down there, the little lawn chairs and everything. Really cool. Oh, there we go. Now it's starting to look like the weird modern art sculpture. Look at that. That's a science museum. But it sure is a beautiful area, isn't it? This is all accurate. This little mosaic tile thing here. That's not quite right. All those angles and stuff, now it's starting to look a little bit more right. That's a flat roof in real life. Okay, that bullet-shaped building over there is called the Glorious Tower. And that's about 475 feet high. And I think that's office space as well. But it is a neat-looking building. And they did a good job of modeling that correctly in the sim. It's all kinds of different colored windows on it. Looks really neat. Opened that baby up in 2005. But it's kind of going to be overshadowed by our next spot, which is that huge cathedral-looking thing over there. That's called the Basilica of the Holy Family, and it is the largest unfinished cathedral in the world. They started working on that in 1882 and kept plodding along until the chief architect died in 1926, and then got buried in there. He asked to be buried in there. It didn't collapse on him. But it was only 1/4 finished when he died. So it just kind of sat there for a while, and in the 1950s, a bunch of different private organizations have been taking only donations to try to continue rebuilding it. And in 2010, they announced that it was 50% complete. And right now the target completion date is sometime around 2034. But I think that was just for some of the carvings and statues. I think they plan on having it open to the public even before that. And maybe you can even go in and see what's done of it now. But look at that place. Looks great. Let's get closer and take a nice look at it. Look at that. Looks phenomenal. Look how detailed it is. Beautiful. The colors are right and everything. And then there's that tower. Okay, over to our right is something called the Carmel Bunkers. We'll just barely be able to kind of make them out. It's this right here. They built that during the Spanish Civil War, which was just prior to World War II, after Barcelona became the first city to ever get a sustained aerial bombardment campaign. So they made this an anti-aircraft battery up here. And after the war, they kind of shut it down. It was vacant for a while, but it became a kind of a shanty town. And all of the poor folks were moving up in there and living in it for a while. And I think now it's open as a museum. But that looks pretty cool. I couldn't really find any other World War II era batteries around here. But that's pretty neat. Look at that. And this is a big cistern they built because they didn't have any water out here for a while, so I don't know where the folks that were living out there got their water from. Oh boy. Let's go ahead and switch the tank because obviously we're having a little bit of a problem with that. There we go. So it says we still have 50% fuel, but I guess it just drained out of the tank. And again, this gauge is not reading correctly, so we're in the air. Hopefully we have enough to get through the rest of this flight. Okay, here comes my favorite part of this trip. And I think you're going to like it too. This giant theme park up here. Look at that. You can already see the roller coasters. It's called Tibidabo Park. And despite how new all these rides are going to look, there's been attractions up here since 1905, making it one of the oldest in the world that's still operating. And they even have several of the original rides down there. And this big thing that looks like a Disney castle is not. That's a real church. It's a cathedral that they built up there. It's not a prop. They started building that in 1902 and continued working on it for the next 60 years. But kind of interesting that they would build a big church in the middle of a theme park. And along the side of it, they built a funicular rail car, also one of the oldest in the world. It runs down the side of the mountain. I couldn't really spot it from this angle that we're flying at, but we'll show you that too on the satellite map when done. And then, of course, they've got the token observation tower. They built this bad boy for the Olympics. Said it's got 13 stories, but at the very top one, it's open so people can go up there and look at things, I guess. All right, let's do a nice close pass. Check this thing out. Look at that. Can you imagine the view you get from up here? Really neat. I watched a little walking tour of that place, a video of it on YouTube. It was cool. That might be the best theme park location we've seen on any of our trips. That is neat. Look at the Ferris wheel over there. Just incredible. Let's slow down a little bit because we're going to descend some as we're coming down the mountains here. Look at that church. Incredible. That is some great looking scenery right there, isn't it? Beautiful. It's going to be hard to pick this next thing out, but we've got a royal palace up ahead by that big stadium down there. It's called Pedro Bales, and it was originally built in the mid-1800s by a wealthy local businessman who made all of his money during the Industrial Revolution. And after being elevated to the status of nobility, the guy gave it to the royal family as a token of thanks. And it's still occasionally used by those guys when they come to town, but they prefer one that's a little bit closer to downtown that we're going to check out shortly. It's by the Olympic Stadium area. And this one is hard to pick out because it's in a bunch of trees, so it's going to be this thing right here. All we'll really see is the back of it. It's got some gardens and stuff out front, but in the sim it's just a little bit too heavily treed up to see it real well. Alright, so we'll see if we can come back down to around 1,500 feet. That massive stadium is the Camp Nou, home to the FC Barcelona. And that was originally opened in 1952 and is currently closed for renovation so they can expand the capacity to 105,000, which will make it the second largest soccer stadium in the world. And they're projected to have that open again in 2026. All right, there's the palace. Can't see much of it. But this stadium looks great, so we'll check that out. I also saw a walking tour of that place. That is big. Really big. Okay, so we're going to check out this literal mountain of awesomeness next, and all that's going to be to the right side of the plane as we set ourselves up for approach. You can see it coming into view up here. All of that was the stuff they built up for the 1992 Olympics. But again, a lot of that was already there from that 1929 expo that they had, so I think they just built onto a lot of that. But that Olympics kind of holds a special place in my heart. That was when I was 16 years old. It was the first one that I really paid any attention to, so I remember that one pretty well. And we're going to see a couple of really neat-looking buildings up here as we come around. One of them is their big art museum, and then we'll see the other palace that was actually built for that expo as a replica of what a royal palace looks like. But now the royal family decides that they want to stay in that one when they come to town. Doesn't appear to be as big as that last one. So here's the art museum. There's the big Olympic Stadium. Look at how good all that looks. And we'll see if we can spot the palace. It's not real huge. This is going to be it right here. We'll dip the wing a little bit as we come around. But look at that art museum. That was also part of the expo from 1929. I think they converted it to the art museum sometime in the 1930s. So there's the palace right there. Nothing real special to look at, but a little bit closer to downtown. Maybe that's why they like it. And finally, to ice this delicious cake for us, we'll see Montjuic Castle up on this hill, being an absolutely perfect spot for harbor defenses. Look at that beauty. And that thing has a bit of infamy is, for at least the past 250 years, being a place of imprisonment for political enemies and lots of executing, torturing, all kinds of terrible things happening there. And you know what I forgot to look for? Can we see the gondola? Oh, I'm not seeing. I forgot to look for it. Well, if you have the add-on pack from Menu Designs, it's on the northern side of it. I'll show you on the satellite map where that is. But that's a cool-looking castle. Really cool. I think that one's shut down for renovations, too. They said they were trying to seal up the roof. I guess they were having a little bit of a leaking problem. All right, so as we come in for our approach here, I'll run through our announcements. Our recent group flight up to Maine was absolutely awesome. We had about 7 folks, maybe even 8 on that one. Really cool. One of our members tried his hand at developing some seaplane bases. We all took it in seaplanes, did a great job. It was really neat. The scenery was beautiful. We're going to try to have those every 2 weeks. So if you want to be a part of one of those, all you got to do is hop on our Discord server. I'll put the link for that in the video description. Just get in the voice chat section for our group flights, which is down on the left-hand side of the screen, and I'll make an announcement here when we have the next one scheduled. I'll also put something up on our community page on YouTube. But that's a lot of fun. And if you've never done one before, we all hop in there about 15 minutes ahead of time just to get everybody squared away. Really easy to get set up. Just make sure you're on the right server. Basically, that's all you got to do. And then hop in the sim. So you can do that with us. And if you want to be a part of our flight plan competition, which is what I mentioned at the start of this flight, we are now in the 3rd one of those. If you got a place that you think we need to check out, I definitely want to check it out. Just let me know where I should depart from, where I should fly into, and a few spots to check out in between. I'll take it from there, draw out the flight plan for us, and if we upload it to the channel, we will vote as a sim community on a little poll on our community page at the end of the quarter, and the winner will get a gift card to the sim vendor of their choice. $50. Maybe even more than that, depending on how much YouTube pays me. I keep donating everything YouTube's been paying me so far. So if you got a plane or an add-on you really want to get, win the flight plan competition. This is our 3rd or 4th entry for this one, so we've got a lot of them this time. And to keep it simple like I did last time, I'll probably just pick my favorite 3 or 4 because we don't have 10 different entries. If you got to go back and watch any of the flights before you vote, so we'll kind of whittle it down if we have a whole bunch of them. But keep them coming. I got plenty of places I want to see, but I want to go to the places I never would have gone to without you telling me about it. And one final little note, I have decided that I'm just dead set on starting to fly the helicopters. You know, we take them like every other flight. I'm going to put a little bit of a hold on that because I want to be able to fly those things without the assist on. I'm committing myself to doing it. The problem I'm having is when I fly for our videos with the assist on, so you don't have to watch me crash every time I try to land, it is building something into my muscle memory that is making it completely counterproductive for trying to fly them without the assist on. So I need to just fly for a week or 2 without the assist on. Getting up is no problem, flying around is no problem, it's just the landing that's an issue. And I'm going to make a real hard effort to do it because I feel like such a poser having all the assists on for that. And I'm not saying I would think of anyone else that's flying with the assist on as a poser, but I feel like I just need to do it because I love the helicopters and I want to get to where I can do it. So I'm going to give it a go. And I've really been thinking about getting a VR headset too. I'm not going to record in VR because those usually don't come out great, but I do want to try flying the helicopters because people have said that it's a lot easier to land in VR. All right, let's give it 1 notch of flaps. And we got to get this baby pretty slow too. I've had a bit of a hopping issue with it. It is a tail dragger. It does have a lot of lift, so we'll just see. And I'm going to come about halfway down the runway if I can because that terminal is down on the other end of it. And again, so once we park, we'll hop out in drone view and check out the inside of that place, which does look pretty good. If you fly south of the airport by, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles, there is another castle down there. It's kind of hard to spot. It looks okay in the sim, but it wasn't worth flying an extra 5 miles down there and back just to see that. I think the stall speed with full flaps might be as low as 40 miles per hour in this thing, so I'm going to try to get pretty doggone slow and see if I can avoid hopping. Well, we made it with enough fuel. Almost had an incident, but we made it. I don't know what those things are to the left. They look like they may be those old pirate-style towers you see all over the Mediterranean, but they also look a little bit defaultish, so I'm not going to call that as anything significant at this point. All right, well, I got to focus on landing this thing. Full flaps. Pappy say we're high, but that's fine because I want to come down the runway just a bit. Trim it up. See if I can keep her level because she will just try to take off again. A little bit of stuttering here, but we do have the Addons airport, which is a good one, so that's to be expected. Otherwise, I have the graphics turned up pretty high. Boy, we are just crawling. I'm going to get down to just a few feet over the runway and then see if I can get her down to about 40 miles an hour. Burn off that speed. Burn it off. Burn it off. Not my worst landing, that's for sure. Alright, back pressure on the stick. Flaps up. And I'm going to have to S-taxi a little bit to get down here to our... You know what, let me zoom in on a little NavMap so I can see where the turnoff is for this thing. Alright, we got a little further to go. So that's it, guys. If you have not flown any of the A1R planes, check them out. Again, I've loved all of them. They got an old seaplane, too. It's more like a flying boat, but a small one, but it's really slow. I think the cruise speed is like 50 knots. So if we fly that one, it's going to have to be somewhere that's a pretty tight flight radius. We won't be able to do that one. But they have another one that looks kind of like this one, too. It's also a bit slower, so I just needed a little bit more speed for this one. That's why I picked it up. And that Imp that we took in Gibraltar, that is a really, really cool plane and great for sightseeing. It's got a huge canopy. All right, there's our turnoff up there. They did throw a few static planes in. I've got them all turned off because of the impact on frame rates, but you'll spot a few of them out here that came with the airport. I don't know if there's any on this side. I spotted a few on the other side. Look at that taxiway. All right. Let's just get somewhere. Get a little throttle. I'll need to take 10 minutes getting up to the terminal. There's a little bus or something up here. We'll park next to that so we can get a trip to the gate. If I can find it. And I mentioned that last flight, if you haven't seen it yet, if you guys are concerned about your frame rates, if you've got a slower machine and you're just frustrated, you've tried all the gimmicks and hacks and tweaking and are not getting any results, I mentioned that last flight, that lossless scaling app that I got. If you don't know what that is, just search for lossless scaling MSFS. Believe it or not, it will cure what ails you. $7. You can get it in Steam, so you need to have it for PC only, I would believe. But it definitely works. Took a flight over New York City in the R22, completely tricked out. Graphics setting at maximum, got my frame rates into the 70s, legit 70s. I don't know how it works or what it's doing, but give that a shot for $7. Can't go wrong. Okay, there's our bus. I'm just going to park right here next to it. And shut her down, then we'll go check out this terminal. Alright. Use our heel toe brakes. Alright, so let's just cut the mixture. That'll do it. Get these guys turned off. And hop in drone view. What a beauty. Look at that thing. Incredible. It seems like all of this in the main terminal section is modded out. The stuff underneath isn't, but inside the terminal is pretty good, especially if you're just looking through the windows, but even inside is pretty doggone good. They got some floating people, and the jetways don't go all the way inside. You'll hit some walls. I'll show you. But the jetways do look good from the outside. And we go. So that part looks right. I don't think you're meant to walk through those, but you're going to hit some walls as you're coming in there. So let's go up here and check out the inside. It's a ghost town. But that'll go all the way down. They got some little shops and restaurants in here. And there should be some people somewhere. Hop on the people mover. Go really fast. So if you go down... Well, they did put a van in there and some ventilation pipes. Look at that. They got the vending machines in there. Let's see if they got anything in the bathrooms. Wouldn't that be something? Doesn't look like it. Nope. That's cool. Look at that. Of course, the sunglass hut. You always got to have one of those. Chocolate factory. And I looked for the baggage claim. Couldn't find it. There's some people waiting for a plane. Look at that. The big advertisements. This is just really neat. Again, you guys know I don't usually pay for airports. Just don't spend enough time in them. But the add-ons that came with this one is what did it for me. That's pretty cool. Every now and then you'll see a car. I wonder how they get those things in there. How do you drive a car up in here? I bet they have a big ramp somewhere. So this is pretty neat. I mean, you can go all the way up and down the inside of it. Looks pretty cool. And all of it looks about like this. So we won't go on and on and on. But they've done the whole thing on this side. The other one on the other big terminal doesn't look as good as this one. Doesn't look like they spent as much time on it. But it's neat. What store is that? Espressamente? That must be a coffee bar. Oh yeah, there's a little espresso cup. All right, so that's that. Let's look at little NavMap real quick. See all the stuff that we saw. Take the centering off. Okay, so that other castle, if you want to check it out, is down here. I didn't put a bookmark on it, but they built a lot of modern stuff on top of it. You can still see the old walls. And I don't know what the significance of that is because since we weren't flying out there, I didn't research it, but it is down there. And here's all those fields. Look at this. Which, I mean, does kind of stick out at you because they built up all of this other stuff around it, but left those farms. So I don't know what the deal is with that. Please let me know if you're from the area what the significance of all those are. There's our big port, which looked great. That will not be flat if you throw in any of the add-ons that take care of that. And then we came down here. Here's the World Trade Center building right there. And then there's the Christopher Columbus statue, which you can tell how big that is by that shadow there. And then here's the big W Hotel, W, which looked a lot better in the sim because we're looking right down at the top of it. So here is their zoo, and there appears to be absolutely nothing left of that citadel. And man, I saw some pictures of what it looked like some etchings of it. And it was pretty big, but you just don't get a sense of the scale when you're looking at a drawing. But it was the biggest in Europe until they tore that down. And then now this part of it's the zoo. And again, I think they did have some of the museums down here at some point until they moved them up to this northern end, which is what we checked out next. So there's the Science Museum. Here's that urban park here. And then there's that thing that looked like the modern art sculpture, but it appears to just be some photovoltaic cells now. And that's a big mall right there. We came over here to the big bullet-shaped building, the Glorious Tower. That doesn't do it justice seeing it there. That is a neat-looking building if you can see a side shot of it. Really, really cool. And then here's this bad boy. Boy, that does look half complete there, doesn't it? Ooh, boy, that doesn't look good at all. Yeah, it looked a lot better in the sim, but you can tell it's not done. They don't have the spires on top of that thing yet. Holy Family Basilica. All right, here's where the anti-aircraft bunkers were up here. And that looked just like that in the sim. So this was a shantyville for a while. I don't know if it still is or not. Those look like pretty small houses up there. But they had folks that moved up into this place and got water from somewhere. Now, let me show you this. I thought this was really cool. They've got a public swimming pool out here that is built down into the side of what looked like a crater of some kind. Can I find it again? Oh, doggone it. I can't find it. But it's pretty neat, and you can see it. Oh, here it is right here. Look at this. Looks a little bit dirty here in the sim, but check this out. It's like a big cliff on this side of it here, and it looks like they got a little zip line or something going over here. There's not anybody there, obviously, so I don't know if that's still open or not, but what a neat spot for a public pool. I don't know what the geological history of that is, but that's kind of a neat-looking formation. And then we came up here to the amusement park, which was just incredible. That could easily pass as a Disney Princess Castle. Look at that. It's right in the middle of the theme park. How cool is that? That looked amazing. Just amazing. And then here's that rail line that they built going up there. So you can park down here. Well, you'd think they'd have an even bigger parking area for... Maybe they got a big parking garage or something, but that's where you hop on that thing, take it up the side of the hill. And I need to remember to show you where those gondolas were down by that big castle. So there's the big radio tower antenna that has an observation deck in it. And then we came down here to check out one of the royal palaces. So that looks a lot better here in the satellite map. All you could really see was the profile there. You can see they got a nice garden. That was totally treed in. You couldn't see that. This is the one that belonged to the wealthy guy who became a count and gave it to the royal family. And I guess they come out there sometimes, but prefer the other place, which we'll see in just a second. And here's the Camp Nou. Really cool looking place in the sim. They did a great job with that. And here's the big Olympic complex. Look at that. That looked amazing. That was so cool. There's the art museum, and then here's the palace that they prefer to stay in these days, which looks pretty cool if you're looking right down on the top of it. Didn't look like much in the sim. But again, that was in 1929 when they had that exposition. That was built to be a replica of a royal residence. You'd think they would have built it up a little bigger than that, but I don't know what they had in there. But that's where they go now when they're coming to town. And then here's that huge castle. So here is where the chairlift is, the gondola thing. It runs through here. I just forgot to look at it. And I'm betting that's probably in there because something like that just seems like it would be, but I don't know. I didn't take a good look at it. This thing looked perfect. It was spot on. Just fantastic. What a cool city. Thank you for the recommendation. It was awesome. Ports look good. Forts look good. Everything looked fantastic. Perfect link for this type of flight and this type of plane. Where we'll go next, I don't know. I got a recommendation of some spots up in Canada that have some interesting geological features, and these last few flights have been pretty intensive as far as research goes for me, so I need a little bit of a breather. Maybe we'll do that one, but I think Sydney is probably going to be in the hopper as well sometime pretty soon, so we'll just have to wait and see. As always, had an absolute blast, and I cannot wait to see y'all again in the skies. Later.